Hi, my name is Jessica Clinton, and I'm here to talk to you about incentives and referendums. An incentive is a process in which citizens can propose a new law or they can make a change to a law. And the way they do this is by collecting a certain amount of signatures um, to get it even qualified or considered to be put on the ballot. So this means that they can't just go up to legislator and say, "Hey, put this on here." No, it means that they have to have a certain amount of people agree on it. But this also allows them to bypass the legislation. They don't have to go to legislation and be like, "Hey, can we get this law put on the ballot?" So no, as long as they have a certain amount of signatures and to meet the criteria, then they're able to get it put on the ballot. Now, when it comes to a referendum, that is the state laws area. So the state legislation um, puts a law or changes a law on the ballot. So this means that they don't really have to ask us citizens if they can do it. They just basically do it. And so, some examples of the referendum is when they want to make a change to the state constitution. They can't just make it. They they don't really have to ask us if they can put the law on there, but they can't just make the change without us voting on it. If that makes sense. Now, an example of incentive is basically like um, a proposal of putting a new building in a historical district, or maybe rezoning school districts. Citizens can get approval of those things through signatures without having to really go through legislation for it. Um, Now, us citizens do have a say on specific laws and policies that interact with the government. Like I said, they can't just be like, "We're doing this and that's the final say." No. They basically have to allow us to vote on it, and whatever we vote, that's what is going to go into place. Now, the way incentives and referendums are created, incentives are created, like I said, through petitions. So they have to go around and get signatures and get people could basically convince other citizens that this law needs to be put on the ballot or this law needs to be changed. This is best for us as a whole. And once they get a certain amount of signatures, then it could possibly get put on the ballot as long as it meets the criteria or it qualifies. First, a referendum, um, the state legislature can just put that on the ballot. Really, they don't really have to get us to sign a petition like we have to do for incentives to get it on the ballot. What is the difference between incentives and referendum? Incentives is, like I said, laws that we as citizens can come together to talk about changing. For example, like I said, um, zoning plans, and maybe like traffic laws versus referendums, or it's like constitution laws. So a citizen incentives can be started by citizens, but referendums can only be initiated by the legislator. Incentives can be used to propose completely new laws, while referendums can only approve and eject laws that have already been passed. And so, those are the two major differences between the incentive and referendum. And so, the pros of these two things is that it gets citizens to participate in the lawmaking, because most times it's hard to get us citizens to vote. So, for when it comes to incentive, if the citizens are putting a law on the ballot that they absolutely feel needs to be on there, then they're going to want to participate. Now, the pros of the referendum is that it's the referendums, they can't, it's basically like laws that have already been made. They can't really like make up a new law without us knowing. So basically they can say, hey, we want this law, or hey, we want to change this law, or they could be like, hey, we don't want this law at all, but we're going to have them vote on it. Now the cons of this, that's that the downfall is that some citizens may not really know what they're voting on, and so they're just choosing things, and that's not really helpful for anyone. And then another con is that one collective group can take over the whole thing. So, for example, maybe the Republican group can just take over the whole thing, and they can get what they want because they all fled the voting polls, versus the Democrats, they don't, it isn't as many voting, and so that's the issue, because that's not really a fair voting, because it's not like an equal amount of people from each side voting. So those are kind of like the downfalls of the incentives and referendums. Now, lastly, the incentives and referendums that support the idea of Democrat that is outlined in the Arizona Constitution. Now, this was kind of interesting to me because I'm from Florida, so I don't really know much about the Arizona. And so, in the Arizona Constitution, initiatives and referendums are seen as support and enhance that direct democracy that allows citizens to participate in the legislation process. And they provide avenue for citizens to have a direct say in creating and changing laws, which basically helps empower their citizens, which I kind of feel like most states do, but that was like kind of very interesting to me because it never really dawned on me that that's how that is.